It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and my mic is doing something really weird. It's driving really hot, so apologies. But yeah, I've got, first of all, I'm a delight hissing a possum shirt today because current mood, hissing a possum. We're going to talk about responsible speech because we talked about free speech yesterday, and I ended up having to go into Ben Shapiro's comment section yesterday to figure out what the hell someone in my comment section was talking about when they called Pedro Pascal saying he defended a pedophile. This is not how I wanted to spend my Tuesday. And I finally did track down the source of the comments. The characterization is, in my belief, false and defamatory. And I take particular exception to this because I was accused of the exact same thing by none other than J.K. Rowling, because she was dragging a board member of the Mermaids charity through the mud based on, it was like a PhD thesis he did on, not offending pedophiles. But the page from his dissertation that was circulating around the web had been faked. And it was a bad fake too. Like, it looked like an old typewriter that was out of alignment. And so I tracked down, somebody got me a copy of his original paper. And of course, you turn to the page in question and none of that text appears on it. And because I believed in facts, J.K. Rowling called me a pedophile apologist, because obviously anybody who works with non-offending pedophiles, also called minor attracted people, must be okay with pedophiles, instead of going, look, this is harm reduction. We want to get to these people before they hurt an actual kid, right? Now, in the case of Pedro Pascal, he tweeted about the people that Kyle Rittenhouse shot after Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted, and he said they were murdered. He named all three. Now, one of those people, Joseph Rosenbaum, was a bad, tragic dude. He was abused as a kid. His mother, I believe, went to jail when he was 13. And in the group home he was in as a teenager, he abused younger boys and ended up going to jail at 18. He subsequently was charged after he got out with abusing a domestic partner, a female partner. But a teenager abusing younger boys is not what most people think of when you hear pedophile. And the only description of Joseph Rosenbaum as a pedophile comes from right-wing media. And I found this because Ben Shapiro commented on Pedro Pascal's tweet, and one of his commenters said, look, he gets his news from the left of the spectrum. This is not reported. This element of the case is not reported there. And it is true that, Kyle Rosenbaum shooting the guy had absolutely nothing to do with his criminal past. Shit was cray-cray in Kenosha. And nobody knew anybody else's criminal record at the time. It was completely irrelevant to whether these three men deserved to get shot or whether Kyle Rittenhouse was criminally culpable of the whole thing. All of it was irrelevant. And I told the guy to knock it off in my comment section, and he doubled down. And of course, he made this comment so quickly, it was impossible for him to have watched the entire video yesterday. And he seemed to think that was not relevant. And so now I have to decide, do I let this crap stay in my comment section? Because it's just, saying someone defended a pedophile, if it's not true, is defamatory. And to defend a pedophile, one, the comments must be made with the knowledge that someone was in fact a pedophile. Two, they have to meet the generally understood definition of pedophilia, which is an adult that sexually abuses children. And, 3, the comments about them actually have to have anything to do with that behavior. But this is what both the right and the left do on the extremes. They just take an unrelated thing, stretch it completely out of proportion, and just use it to defame people instead of engaging with the ideas and saying why it was wrong. Now, the commenter said this under the guise of, it's just about affiliation. Pedro Pascal's on the left, so it's fine. Gina Carano's on the right, so it's not. And I even disagree with that summary, because what Pedro Pascal said, that they were murdered, was within the Overton window of people who were very disturbed that in America you can shoot someone in the street with an automatic weapon when you cross state lines. And I could be wrong about some details here. This is just my understanding of what happened up here in Canada. I watched some of the trial, but, obviously I couldn't follow all of it. But, somebody put an automatic weapon in a 17-year-old's hands. He crossed state lines to go into, the equivalent of a failed state where literally dumpsters on fire were rolling down the street, shoots 3 people, and that's not a crime. Because of, I'll say, in case anybody cares, according to U.S. law, what Kyle Rittenhouse did was not murder. I think based on the laws, that was accurate, Whether those are good laws, I'm not a lawmaker. But if anybody's interested, I'm not taking this opinion because I agree with Pedro Pascal here. I think Pedro Pascal had an emotional response. The thing is, it was within what was considered mainstream opinion at the time. It had nothing to do with left or right, and I say this as somebody who recognizes that trans girls in girls' sports right now, being supportive of that is outside of mainstream opinion. You just have to look at the data to say that. And so, yeah, if you defend that, if you support that right now, personally, I think it's stupid to obsess over what any 10-year-old is doing on a softball field. They're not old enough to have any sort of physical advantage at that point. You get into high school, you get into university, okay, we can debate that. But I've seen the numbers. I understand that right now, defending people like Leah Thomas, whether history ends up deciding that, not letting her compete going forward is a miscarriage of justice or not. Right now, popular opinion is, no, trans women do not belong in, college women's sports or professional women's sports, anything. And some people say, well, not even high school because that justifies scholarships. And at that point, I'm like, if you're right on the bubble and some trans girl got in instead of you, nobody took your spot, there's no right to a sports scholarship. There's no right to play professional sports. Title IX says that sports programs have to offer all the programs they offer to men to women. That's what it says. There's no constitutional right. There's no human right to get a sports scholarship. Now, that being said, that's true for anybody, so it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. And this is what happens when you stick to the facts and you are responsible in your speech. I think that the violence against Black and brown trans women is undeniable, which is why the fight isn't focusing on that. I think that the benefits to going through appropriate puberty once to people with proper medical screening, those are undeniable and are far safer than the critics believe it to be, but has trans advocacy absolutely fucked this one up? Yeah. But one of the smears against pro-trans people is that we are defending pedophilia, that we want to mutilate children. And so I really don't appreciate that trash coming to my YouTube comments, because Pedro Pascal has a trans sister. That was the context of the comments yesterday. That is irresponsible to just accuse the man of defending a pedophile, because I guarantee you, if he'd actually done that, if that accusation would not have been a crock of shit, it would have been everywhere, precisely because they love to smear anybody who is pro-trans rights as a pedophile apologist, which is what J.K. Rowling called me, or a defender of pedophiles because of appropriate puberty once. You know, let's not torture children. Let's figure out how to screen them properly. And the kids who really need medical transition should get it. Oh, they'll grow out of it. Watchful waiting. I just don't see the data to show that that works in every case. There are some kids that need that. And of course, it doesn't start with just, here's hormones, have a nice life. That's not how it works, at least not here in Canada. You know, I've talked about this before. The US healthcare system is one where if you have enough money, you can get anything you want. Look at what killed Matthew Perry. That started off as ketamine treatments for treatment-resistant depression, that he never should have been given that therapy in the first place because of his history with addiction. And there are a lot of WTF things going on with these resurgence of ketamine and electroshock treatments and things like that in the US. They're taking desperate people and not screening them for comorbidities or past history that might make them poor candidates for these sorts of treatments. But these people are so desperate and unfortunately looking for something that the effectiveness is overstated. It promises to be a quick and permanent fix. And the more widespread data keeps coming out, there is an improvement, but you still need to do the talk therapy. You still need to do the habit changes. You still need to do the hard work. They can't just give you a drug and you're all better. It doesn't work that way. And there is not the same belief in defending the vulnerable on those treatments. And I am absolutely staggered by the number of people who are just, self-dosing ketamine therapy. Worse, people are being sent to clinics. And the way it's supposed to work is that you take the ketamine, you have the experience, and then someone talks to you afterwards and they unpack what you experienced. That is the stuff that they tested, that they did the studies on. That's not what's being done, because of course, talking to somebody for an hour is more expensive than just being administered a drug when they can give, 12 other people that same drug that hour. And so they're not doing the follow-up talk therapy. They're just giving people drugs and sending them home. That's the US healthcare system. There's abuses all over the place, but there's this focus on trans kids where, even though up here in Canada, we have about a third of minors who go in for gender care either choose to not proceed or the doctor won't sign off on it. And I think that's a fairly good rejection rate. Are some kids going to be unfairly screened out? Yes. And that is awful in those cases. But the balance in our system is working. and I don't see the need to mess with it. Why is this so important? Well, if a trans girl goes through appropriate puberty, meaning she starts hormones before puberty really kicks in and goes through girl puberty instead of boy puberty, there's no physical advantage. There's absolutely no reason why she can't play girl sports. None. Absolutely zero, none, because all the advantages begin at puberty. Those are just facts. And there are people, no, those aren't just facts. No. Be responsible in your speech. Do not just quote something you heard on Joe Rogan, because Joe Rogan repeated the internet rumor that kids in schools were identifying as cats and asking to use the litter box, claiming a friend or a friend's wife said it, or a friend's sister or something like that. No, he either misremembered it or just outright lied. These are not reliable scientific sources. We get people who are signed up to, mental health stuff get this information. And is it totally signed, sealed, and delivered? No, absolutely not. I will not say we are 100% sure about all the risks and all the benefits with trans youth medicine, because nobody's going to approve a double-blind study on minors for anything at all. Not just this. You don't give a kid a placebo that can make them suicidal because it exacerbates their gender dysphoria. That is torturing a minor. So it's the sort of thing of you have to take the absolute emergency cases and see how they do and use that going forward. And that's the best they can possibly do. And if anybody's wondering where I got this information, it was The Economist. That is not exactly trans friendly. So there you go. This is responsible speech on a dicey issue. And when we talk about freedom of speech, we also need to talk about responsibility for speech. Because, to quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And if you have the ability to be heard by, even hundreds of people, there's a form of power there. And let's face it, someone coming into my comment section and spewing garbage, they're using the 1,000 people, that I reach to spread their crap. And this person may completely believe what they're saying. I don't totally buy it. I think they don't like Pedro Pascal. And so they just found a bullshit lie that they didn't check out and just spewed it because, I don't like him. So it's fine. Other people would do that. People have done that to me. People have lied about me. So this is just it. Bullshit. If you don't like it done to you, don't do it to other people. Check out these claims. Burden of proof is on the accuser. If I had the money, and really, see what J.K. Rowling said about me is that defamatory, because technically I'm a public figure and it's a newsworthy thing. So was it defamatory? Well, it would have to go before a judge, and she has more money than me, right? Prosecuting something, doing a lawsuit across the Atlantic Ocean, very expensive. And that's why she is allowed to say this bullshit and other people aren't. Because she can just sue whoever complains into oblivion. And God, nobody can say anything about her because she'll sue them for that too. And this is the problem. This is the fucking problem. And I said this at the beginning of the end of the video that the guy, of course, didn't get to the end to, but insisted that, oh no, he didn't completely miss the point. I said at the end of the video that we have rich people like J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk who can say whatever the fuck they want and just sue people. And then we have the rest of us. And this is not freedom. The only way we get any sort of balance back is if we actually do recognize that money is power. These massive platforms are power. And irresponsible use of power is tyranny. It's the opposite of freedom. So if you're not embodying responsible speech and you're using the excuse of, well, nobody cares what I think, well, then why say it? You know? And, you know, I tend to give people a chance. That's why I tell them to cut it the fuck out. I also put the facts about it in, so if anybody saw it, they'd also see the counter argument. Because I believe in, you know, combating bad speech with good speech. But it doesn't always work. Because people are just, ironically, going to go, oh, she's a fucking libtard. And so, of course, she's going to say that, even though I outlined all the information. Liberal, fucking pedo, groomer. That's where we're at. And that shit spreads. And, I mean, the very fact in this country, people put away the fuck Trudeau shirts within 4 days. 4 days of the fucking election. I saw a fuck Carney shirt. The guy hadn't even done anything yet. And fuck Carney. Right? And people who get their news from the conservative end of things think everybody does this because, well, let's face it, that's the conservative media's MO. And their justification is, well, we do it because everybody does it. The left doesn't do it the exact same way. The left tends to cherry pick facts instead of something like this that is just an absolute twist of it. But they also go, well, it's problematic. It's potentially harmful, which is also irresponsible, but not in the same way. It's absolutely impossible to prove a possibility, which is why I cannot stand it when people say, isn't it possible that you're mistaken? Well, the only answer there is yes, because of course it's possible. The possibility is not zero, but that's not what they're really saying, is it? Because it's also possible I'm not wrong, but they're focusing on the possibility that I am wrong. And I said to this one guy that because you didn't watch the video to the end, the likelihood that you got this wrong is greater than the likelihood that you got this right. You left the door open. And I didn't exactly say it that way. I'm paraphrasing because out of context, it would make no sense here. But that's the point. That anybody who will say the possibility that they are mistaken is zero, that's false certainty, right? Because you can be 99% certain, but no thinking person should be 100% certain of anything you did not see with your own eyes and hear with your own ears. And even then, people mishear, honestly. Right? Anybody who cares about facts recognizes this is so. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody can feel strongly about anything, because we all function under this system. We can only do our best. If there is a text conversation of something, I mean, I know I've gone back and looked at certain text conversations, and when heads are cooler, they look very different, but it's still valid that things were whipped up at the time. Maybe nobody did anything wrong. Humans are human. We have emotions. Other times it's just very clear. You know, if somebody says, I said something in a text message, and they have to rearrange the order of the conversation to make that fit with their alleged facts, well, at that point, they are being misleading. You know, if the conversation is not presented in the order it happened, then they're lying on some level. That is dishonest. And it's amazing how many people get caught doing that with me personally and go, well, maybe I did, but I don't think that changes anything. It changes everything, because one of us has been proven to be misrepresenting things and the other hasn't. And too many people think that doesn't matter. And it very much does, because at that point, was it an honest mistake? If so, you will acknowledge the mistake and recognize, yeah, that wasn't great. Or you can do what the people have done, which is, well, it changes nothing. Of course it doesn't change nothing. At the very least, put it back up in the correct order. Of course, they never do, because then it paints a very different picture. And I don't bother putting this shit out in public. Partially, I just find the whole practice distasteful. A private conversation is a private conversation. And there has to be an exceedingly high bar for me to make a private conversation public. But also, once you go down that road, any mistake you make, any twisting of those documents does matter. And people are going to judge that. And I don't go into it unless I have the ability to, meticulously check and recheck and triple check. Precisely because I know that. I've been down that road. You make one innocent mistake and people think you're a liar. I've said that, Most people do not have the time to fact check this stuff meticulously, especially if you Google Pedro Pascal defends pedophile. Nothing came up on my search. I saw the Ben Shapiro thing, Facebook thing come up. I'm like, let's take a flyer, see what this is. And sure enough, it had something to do with Kyle Rittenhouse. But some people reported that he called the guy a hero. That is not the statement I saw. He just said the names of the 3 men who Rittenhouse shot and said murdered date. Which, again, was not out of the realm of leaning left mainstream opinion at the time. It was not a completely out there view. Whereas Gina Carano comparing... And, see, this is the thing about Gina Carano. She didn't say hating right-wing people. She said hating people for their political views. So people who said that she was saying, she was comparing liberals to Nazis, that's not actually what she said. That was implied. And it's not right no matter who does it. And I mean, Carano had a pattern of opinion, a pattern of behavior at that point. And I think she was driven to have poor mental health. And I'm sure if she were to do it over again, she just would have gotten off the internet. But hindsight's 2020. I can't criticize her for something I've done too. I said that in yesterday's video. And so the fact that somebody took that and decided, instead of going, okay, 2 wrongs don't make a right, and decided to take a crack at Pedro Pascal under false pretenses because own the libs. No, that's bullshit. That's irresponsible. That misses the point. And to not own it is further irresponsible. But this is normal internet behavior. And I'm done with it. There's a reason on my Discord server, if you post a link, you have to explain why you're posting it. In part to make sure you've read it, but also it's because Discord has viruses that come through links. And so we want to make sure it's very clear a human sent this. But also, I don't want people brainlessly spamming links because too often on Facebook, people just see the headline, don't read the fucking article and share it. And there's garbage buried in it. No, not on my watch. Memes stay in memes. Any, political talk goes in a particular channel because you have the right to talk about it. Other people have the right to avoid it so the pictures of dead kids don't wreck their fucking day. People have the right to be able to function. These are all just basic basic responsible speech patterns. And I have had right-wing people blow up on me for it. I've had left-wing people get super nasty at me over it. Like, really get personal. I lost a goddamn friend over this, but in hindsight, were they really a friend? Probably not. You know, this is a core value for me, because I do believe so strongly in freedom of expression and the free marketplace of ideas. You can't just say whatever the fuck you want. You can't. You shouldn't want to. You should want to state your opinion as opinion. If you're not stating as an opinion, your facts better be correct. Have a commitment to the facts. Have a commitment to better every single day. Do better. That's how I live my life, not expecting perfection. But that's how I live my life. And that's how I expect the people I interact with to behave. Same rules for everybody. And again, everybody makes mistakes. But when someone says this information is not accurate, cut it out, don't get up in their face and double down. At that point, that's not freedom of speech. That's getting in your feelings and being irresponsible and being unable to admit that you just falsely accuse someone of defending something goddamn awful. And I am so sick about having to read about child abuse because people crack off about this shit online. That's what got me hissing possum. Because I had to read about the wreck that was Joseph Rosenbaum's life. And my God, it's tragedies compounding tragedies and compounding tragedies. And we know that a lot of people who, abuse kids, especially as teens, were abused themselves. You have to carry that all day when you read about it, possibly the next day and the next day. And I didn't want to have to go there, but somebody had to believe in facts, and I wasn't just going to go, that's not fucking true, because Pedro Pascal has said some kind of wild things. So, hey, I was open to it, but the fact that it took me so fucking long to find out what the fuck this guy was on about, and it was just such a stretch that I will call bullshit on this statement. We can't prove Pedro Pascal knew about the guy's criminal background. That does not, again, most people see pedophile as an adult that abuses a child under the ages of between 12 and 14. It's expanded to be any minor, but that's not technically correct. Pedophile is adult and prepubescent. That's what most people think of. That is not so. It was abuse in a group home when Joseph Rosenbaum was a teenager. And I could be wrong about that, but that's what I read on NPR while because he was sent to jail for it at 18. So he had to be under 18 when he actually did it, because the courts don't work that fast, right? And we're all responsible for not spreading this shit. And sure, we get fooled. But when someone is just fucking brazen about it, and I have to read about all these lives that were destroyed because, the left doesn't report this shit. So Pedro Pascal probably didn't know. I only knew because I followed what the right was saying about the whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing, because I wanted to form a balanced opinion. But I have to read so much goddamn awful, disturbing shit, I don't like having to read PhD dissertations on minor attracted people. I get that some people have to do that to try to protect kids. Get these guys before they offend, they offend, before they hurt a kid. That's a lofty goal. You have to deal with some very creepy people to do it, and you have to find a way to entice them to talk. And the fact that an entire charity got fucked over because J.K. Rowling totally twisted that shit completely pisses me off. I didn't deserve to get accused of being a pedophile apologist for that. And Pedro Pascal did not deserve to be accused of defending a pedophile because he happened to tweet about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. Do better. We only get true freedom of expression if we are responsible in our speech. And until you take responsibility for your speech, you are going to continue to be miserable because people are going to keep telling you to fuck right off. And you're creating misery for the people around you because they have to source this crap and be exposed to this shit. Stop it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. If you don't have any money, like and subscribe to this channel. It helps too. Thanks for watching and be well.